And now, back to the Geek Speak Radio Show on TalkZone.com. Here's Henry and Romo.
Well, Henry, at least. Welcome back to the Geek Speak Radio Show on what we're calling Star Trek Day. Yes, we heard your, I won't call them complaints, just your requests for Star Trek Day. So we're doing it now. I just spoke to Nicholas Meyer, director of Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. And like I said, his book is out now. The link is on GeekSpeakRadioShow.com. Let's stick with books. Paula M. just wrote another book. She's written many books on Star Trek. But she wrote a new one that's out in stores right now. The link is also up on GeekSpeakRadioShow.com right now as we speak. Her book is called Star Trek The Original Series 365. And no, it's not a calendar. It's a very good behind-the-scenes look at the original series. Paula, you there?
I am here.
Hi, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So let's before we get into the book itself, let's talk about you a little bit. In the intro to the book, you say that you're a geek both by nature and by profession. Elaborate a little bit on that statement.
Well, I was born a geek by nature, as I think I mentioned in that same thing. I always had an interest in all the things that other geeks have, popular films, popular books, popular TV shows, all of that stuff. And I got hooked on them in the way that geeks always do. But like normal people, I also had a different career. At one point I was deeply involved with fandom and writing fanzines and helping hold conventions, all of that back in the golden days of Star Trek conventions. Mm-hmm. And, and then as time went by and you realize you have to earn a living, I got a career in publishing because actually my interest in geek things had made me want to write and edit and be involved with production and all that. So I got involved in the publishing industry, and I was an editor at a magazine at McGraw-Hill. It was a technical trade magazine, so it wasn't really close to showbiz, but it was publishing, And I worked there for a number of years, and then I moved out to Los Angeles, and I wanted to get involved with the entertainment industry, and through a fluke, I happened to hear about a job over at Paramount Pictures. They needed somebody who had a background in publishing who knew a lot about Star Trek, and they weren't advertising the job because obviously that would have opened the door to a million inquiries. And so I got to interview through them, and I was hired for the job, and I then became the person who was in charge of doing the in-house editing on the whole Star Trek line of books and magazines and comic books that came out from about 1988 until I left the studio a couple of years ago. And, there were other things I did, too, besides Star Trek. It was a major portion of the licensing department over there, obviously, since it was the biggest franchise they had in terms of continuing business. But I also edited books on The Godfather and, any movie that came out at the moment that was a big hit, except for something like Raiders of the Lost Ark, which was Paramount Film, but Lucasfilm controlled the licensing. So, right. So my background in fandom came in handy when I got the job over at Paramount.
Yeah, sure. And you got introduced to the original series Star Trek, a TV show, when you were in high school, I believe. I wasn't lucky enough to see it when it was first broadcast. I caught it in syndication later. When you first started watching the TV show, did you get the messages behind the episodes?
Yeah, I think I did. I was old enough to understand that stuff, because I was in high school, so obviously I understood themes, but, they became much more obvious watching them in retrospect. People weren't really used to seeing TV shows over and over and over again in those days. Mm-hmm. So, a TV show would air, and then during the summer there would be a rerun season, so you would get to see the episode one more time. And that was usually it for television in those days. And a lot of the messages behind Star Trek didn't really become apparent until people were able to see it over and over again, with the advent of video and syndication.
Right.
So yeah, I was aware of a lot of the messages. Every now and then one would really hit, because I was becoming aware of Vietnam and protest, and suddenly you'd realize, ooh, this means something in a TV show. Wow. But, I think a lot of the stuff that's been interpreted from Star Trek since then has come with the ability to watch it over and over again.
You think that, I never actually thought of that because, like I said, I come from the generation that has syndication and now DVDs and, now especially we have on the internet, you can watch the episodes. But back then, like you said, I didn't think of that until you mentioned it right now. Yeah, you're right. TV shows, they had pretty much one shot, maybe two when they replayed it again over the summer hiatus. But do you think that's what connected with the audience back then, the messages, but also the characters and everything else?
I think that really what connected with the audience probably, the main message that I think that came across that made it popular with viewers was the optimism of it, the fact that there would be a future, the fact that people would be able to work together in outer space. I mean, if I was given a choice, I loved the Star Wars movies too, but if I were given a choice to be able to transform myself into a fictional character and either live in the Star Wars universe or the Star Trek universe, I'd really prefer the Star Trek universe because it's a much more positive universe. And yeah, you can get destroyed by the Borg, you can get destroyed by the Doomsday Machine, anything like that. But at least in the meantime, there's a day-to-day life where you're doing a lot of things and don't have to worry about the Empire coming and destroying your home.
Right. What did you think of all the Star Trek series that followed, including the Next Generation, Voyager, and all the rest?
The Star Trek series, I like them all. I think my heart is always going to be with the original series because it's like that first date you had with the first boyfriend that you fell in love with, or girlfriend. But I also have a real deep affection for the other ones for different reasons. The Deep Space Nine companion, my husband Terry Erdman and I wrote a book about Deep Space Nine, and so we kind of lived the show for 7 years. Terry was on the set every day for 7 years and got to know the people involved with it, both the actors and behind-the-scenes people, really well. And, and I, from my job over at the office building, while he was playing on the set, I got to know them too. So that show is real close to us as well. And we love TNG because it had a different kind of message, and it was interesting, and the characters were great, and Voyager and Enterprise. I love all of them to a different degree. Original series will probably always be my favorite. Yeah,
me too. I enjoyed all of them. I enjoyed Voyager out of all of them, but I also go back to the original always. Do you have a favorite episode from the original series?
It varies. I could be cliche and say it's The City on the Edge of Forever because it really does pick up everything that was right about the show. Everything kind of clicks and works on it. It has moments of, ooh, because it's irony, and it's great from the point of view of the friendship between the characters. It's got some great technology hook. It's a really good story. It's like a Twilight Zone episode in Star Trek, but for a long time, when I was younger, I really liked the episode The Empath because of all the episodes, it's the one that emphasizes the Trinity nature of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy the most, which was always a big hook for me. Because I'm really into writing, I always got into characterization, and I liked the interplay between the characters, so I really liked that episode because of that. Tribbles, because it was so much fun, and I love Spock's brain just because it's so stupid.
And since we are talking about it, let's get into it. And the name of the book, again, is Star Trek The Original Series 365, written by Paula M. Block. It's in stores right now, and I have a link on geekspeakradioshow.com if you guys want to go on there and go ahead and get it. Let's give them a little a taste of what's in the book. Let's talk about The Trouble with Tribbles, because that is one of the fan favorites, one of my favorites also. So give us a little bit about the Trouble with Tribbles.
The Trouble with Tribbles. Well, let me say first, before we get into specifics that were in the book, the fact that the book was kind of meant to just pull together. It's like a scrapbook. There have been other books that have gone very in-depth into talking about the episodes, like the Compendium or B. Joe Trimble's book that she did about the original series, too. So it wasn't really meant to be an all-inclusive book. It was meant to be kind of pieces from the memory and a little bit of interpretation of things. So, and even David Gerald wrote a book about the entire episode, which is, I think it's out of print. It might have been reprinted by a smaller publisher, though, too. But anyway, about the show. The show was a great show with a lot of fun in terms of how it was written. I don't know. David Gerald might be a good interview for you sometime on that. The tribbles themselves were made out of bits of scraps of fabric that they found. You know, there was a lot of that long-haired fur in those days, really crappy-looking stuff. And, in fact, John Dwyer, who helped work on with the props and with the set deck on the show, even says there are a lot of these tribbles that are around that you still find at conventions. And they said if it's really pretty and nice-looking, don't buy it because it's probably not one of them. He says because the real ones looked like crap, you know. You know, especially after all this time. The fur in those days, you know, synthetic materials were not what they are today. And, you know, some of them were stuffed with little toys that made them move, little walking toys and things like that. But I'm not sure what kind of details you want on it.
That's fine, actually. That's, like I said, I wanted to give him a tease, a little taste of what's in the book. And like you said, it doesn't go into detail in depth, and it's not a behind-the-scenes look at the episodes. You're right. It's actually it's more nostalgic than anything. It really brought me back it made me actually want to put in the DVDs and watch the episodes again.
And that's exactly what I felt along with Terry when we were writing the book, you know, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen these shows, both at home because I like the show and for my job, because anytime I'd be researching something, trying to figure out the exact details for a book or something like that came up, I'd have to go plug in something to check my facts, because initially with my job, the Internet was just kind of starting out. You couldn't look up everything on the Internet that you can today, so you had to go back to the original source. So, but in working on this book, I was surprised at how nostalgic it made me feel, and I actually did start watching all the episodes again, even though it was an episode I knew really well and didn't need to watch again for that particular write-up on that episode.
Yeah, this is a great book to have, on your side when you're watching the episodes, and when you're done, you can just open it up and find out some little factoids about the episode you just finished watching. Did you ever get to meet Gene Roddenberry when you started working with Paramount?
I did, actually, because he was still alive. When I started working at Paramount, the show TNG was in its third year. And a lot of times I would have to go over and consult with him because he was consulting on any sort of licensed merchandise proposals that came into the studio. And he wanted to be involved in it, and sometimes he wouldn't approve of something, so I would go over and we'd have a discussion about whether this was a good story or a bad story, you know, to tell, and if he didn't like it, he would express his feelings about it. So it was interesting. So, I mean, I never got to be good friends with Gene or anything, but I did meet him a number of times and talk to him, and I really respected him.
Yeah, in a quick program, we're going to be talking not to Gene, but to his son, Rod, in just a few minutes on Star Trek Day, as we're calling it today. And before I let you go, Paula, what do you see in Star Trek's future, especially now that we ourselves are heading into the 21st century? How do you see Star Trek's future? Do you think it's still going to hold up?
Yeah, I do. And, you know, I think the studio's decision to kind of reboot the series with a new young cast was a really good decision. You know, as Mr. Meyer said, I was listening to the show before he called me. You know, there are certain things that I liked, certain things I didn't understand, too. And, you know, from a story sense, I kind of went, well, I would have liked more detail here because I don't quite know how they got from point A to point B. But I think the idea of recasting and even the kind of the new alternate timeline is not a bad idea, you know, because for my job, I was required to remember everything about Star Trek from day one, just because I never knew when I'd need to come up with certain information. But there's no reason why the general public has to carry that stuff around in their head to be able to understand a movie or a TV show. So I think it was a great idea. So I do think Star Trek's going to go on for as long as people want to hear stories about people going into outer space and meeting new things. So
again, Paula M. Block, she's the author of Star Trek, the original series 365 in stores right now. And I have the link at geekspeakradioshow.com. Paula, thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Not a problem. You're welcome back anytime.
Okay.
Okay, have a good one.
Bye-bye.